Hey y'all, it's Brady. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me. If you are brand new here, hello, welcome. We are a family of 4. We have 2 kiddos, my husband, myself, and then a crazy dog. So today I just thought I'd bring you along as I cook for Father's Day, doing some of my husband's favorites and stuff we love too. We're just gonna have a family day at home. So I am really excited to share this cooking day with y'all. Just come along. I'm just gonna make a big breakfast. It's late in the morning though. It's already 10 o'clock, so it's gonna be more like brunch. But we've just had a lazy morning. And then I'm going to make taco bake for dinner. I'm also gonna do some bacon wrapped jalapeno poppers, possibly a cheesy rice and bean bake. I haven't decided yet. And then a big salad to go with that too. So just come along. I'm just gonna pop the tripod up here and bring you along as I cook everything. I'm gonna start out with making the bacon and the sausage. And if you saw my last grocery haul, I will link that above for you. We actually plan to do sausage balls too. We have like a family recipe for that. So I am going to make that this morning, and I'll show you how that works too. So come along.
All right, so we are starting out this morning just making the sausage for the sausage balls, and then I'm also gonna start frying up the bacon. So I just have a large skillet, like my extra large Sam's Club skillet there on the left for the bacon, and then I'll also use that same pan for gravy. And then I'm just using the Tennessee Pride sausage in that right pan in a smaller, I believe that one was also from Sam's Club. I think that one's a 10 or a 12 inch, but it's plenty big enough. It just doesn't look quite as big on here. But it was plenty big enough for the whole pound of sausage, so I just broke that up into pieces. I'll let it start cooking, and then it's easier to use my wooden spoon and separate it into much smaller pieces. And then I do break my bacon into half slices usually. It's just easier to cook that and turn it and then make more pieces fit in the pan. So I'm just going to get those all set in there and then wash up my hands and let this cook away. We decided to do more of like a brunch. We let my husband sleep in and then had kind of a brunch. It was like literally about 11 o'clock by the time we ate, so definitely brunch. So I'm gonna start just watching this bacon and moving this sausage around, and then we'll move on to the biscuits. Okay, so for the biscuits, I just use a very, very, very simple, I guess it's a recipe, but not really because I don't measure. I just use self-rising flour, so it already has the leavening agents in it and salt. And so then I just add in several scoops. I believe this is 1/3 of a cup or maybe 1/4 cup. I do approximately 2 cups of flour, but it is never exact. And then I do use shortening and butter. And I do use salted butter. So I just break up the shortening. I really like these Crisco sticks versus the big canister. I have used the big canister pretty much my whole life until I found out about these sticks a while back, and I really prefer those. It's just so much nicer to be able to cut it like that. And then I am using, I would say, about 1/3 of a stick of butter here. And I'm just cutting these up into super small bits because we are still going to mix this up and cut in our butter and shortening. But I like to coat the butter and shortening with some of the flour that's in there before I start trying to cut it in. I do have a pastry cutter to, professionally or officially put that in there, cut the butter, but sometimes I just get in here with my hands and do it that way, and it seems to work a lot better for me because I can feel what I'm doing. So I don't know that it makes that big of a difference, but this is what I did today. So I'm just gonna mix this up here with my fingers until I see that it is thoroughly mixed in and incorporated, because you want to see sort of a, I don't want to say cornmeal consistency, but you'll kind of see that there's just small little bitty bits of butter or shortening mixed into the flour. And then I'll add in my milk. You can use whole milk or 2% or whatever you have. I happen to have whole normally, but today I happen to have 2%. So I think, like, if you were really going to measure this, it's probably 2/3 of a cup of milk to the 2 cups of flour. But again, I just mix and go and see what works. So I'll put an approximate recipe for you down in the description below, but just know that you're just going to have to kind of feel this out until it's a shaggy but thoroughly mixed dough. And then normally, if I'm making a full batch of biscuits, I would roll these out, but I'm just not doing that. I'm just taking a little bit of flour on my hands and scooping up some dough and just kind of dropping them on the pan. I do like to put them close together because that forces them up. I don't know if there's, necessarily a science to that, but that is what I prefer to do. I just think it pushes them up instead of out, and you get a fluffier biscuit. So we're just going to throw these in the oven. It made 6 pretty large biscuits, 400. Turn the light on so I can see, and then I need to flip this bacon and keep an eye on it, because you're going to see what happens when I get distracted. You're going to see that whenever I get distracted, things definitely get burned, and yeah, we don't want that. Luckily, I did not burn the sausage or all of the bacon though, so all was not lost, but just know that it happens to the best of us. Happens to all of us. So this is that point where I was telling you about that I'm just going to mince this down further into smaller chunks of sausage because you want it to better incorporate.
Okay, so that is it for the biscuits. They're going to cook for about 15 minutes and we'll check them. And now you can see I'm distracted, but I am cooking the sausage and bacon now. They are about halfway done, little over. And so now I'm going to prep our potatoes to put in the oven. Just keep an eye on this meat, because I don't know about you, but I have a tendency to burn bacon if I don't keep up with it. And yes, if you, I know this may come up in the comments, and I have done this many times, you can actually put your bacon in the oven. I just didn't feel like doing that and needed the grease on the stove to make the gravy, so we're just going to roll with it on the stove. But it is a lot less messy and a little easier, where you don't have to constantly flip it and all of that if it's in the oven. So there's that.
And see what I'm talking about? I did not keep an eye on it and I burnt the bacon. So we've got a fresh batch going, the sausage still cooking, and now we're going to get these potatoes going. So I was going to put these simply diced potatoes in the oven, but my oven was kind of full with a big pan with the biscuits on it. So I just decided that we'll just throw it all in the skillet and go from there. So I'm going to go ahead and take out the bacon and then throw in a little bit more bacon in the pan just because I burnt most of that first batch. And we did have quite a bit of bacon left over, but it's been great to be able to throw that on salads. I think we're going to use the last little bit of cooked bacon and throw it on baked potatoes. So I'm just going to let this cook up, and then you will see this does produce a lot of grease because it is so much bacon. So I'll definitely drain some of the grease off before we make the gravy. So I'm just heating up my pan with some oil in it over there. I just used regular vegetable oil. You can also use olive oil and butter, or whatever you prefer. Avocado oil would probably work well too. And then I'm seasoning with garlic powder, minced onion, salt, and pepper. And these took probably 30 or so minutes. They did take a while because you're going to want to make sure they get soft in the middle and then crunchy on the outside. So if I'd had a slightly larger pan, it might not have taken quite so long, but it worked out just fine. So we've got the bacon all done here, and I don't think I'm going to cook anymore. I think that'll be plenty. So I'll end up draining off some of the grease there, and I'm just showing you how I'm going to do that. I keep a jar with bacon grease, and I think it's kind of time to skim off some of the bits that accumulate in your bacon grease, and then start a fresh jar. But I do want to leave some in there, and I just scoop that out with my ladle and then put it into the mason jar. So I'm going to add about probably a third of a cup of flour here. I don't know, y'all, I'm terrible at measuring things. The only time I really measure is with baking, but it worked out fine. So you can see here that it was kind of drier than I wanted. So I'm just going to take a spoon and drop that into my pan. Just a couple of teaspoons more of baking grease. This is not an exact science, but I just want to make sure that I cook the flour taste out. You don't want that raw flour taste, so it's not going to be a perfectly white gravy, but it is delicious. So now that has cooked out, I'm just going to add the 2% milk. And I really like these Rachel Ray spatulas because of the triangular shape of them. They're just awesome. So I'll try to link those down below for you if you're interested. They have many sizes and colors, and they're made of nylon instead of like a cheap plastic. And so they really hold up well. I don't normally cook with plastic utensils, with the exception of like the ladle there and these spatulas. The rest I like to use wooden if at all possible. That's just my preference of what I cook with. But I do really like those Rachel Ray ones. So like I said, there'll be a link down in the description box for you. And then there's a look at our gravy all finished up, and that jar is hot. But I'm just going to push that back to the side and let it sit, and we'll just take a look at these potatoes here. So they're definitely getting a crisp on them, but you know, they're not done. They're definitely not done in the middle. Those Simply potatoes are refrigerated. They are not frozen, but they do still take a while to cook all the way through. And now I'm going to work on my sausage balls. And so this is one of my husband's favorite recipes that was passed down to me by his mother, and I am really like it's an honor to make them. I know it sounds goofy, but it really is. It's one of those things that, like, you know, when it's your mama's cooking and someone else can do it, you know, semi close to how she does it, and you enjoy it, that's a high compliment. So anyways, this is a super simple recipe, and so but it's super delicious as well. So this is a pound of sausage and 1 8-ounce block of cream cheese that I let come to room temperature. It was not completely room temperature, so you can see it is kind of hard to mix up. Never you mind the trash there. It was also fridge clean out. And so that's going to go out to the, well, it's just, we rounded up trash to take out. So that'll be gone shortly. But these are just the little cheap biscuits, those little bitty small ones. I think these were 50 cents a can at Kroger. And so I started out using my fingers, but then I remembered, no, this is much quicker with my rolling pin. This is a French rolling pin also. I don't know that I can find the exact one that I have because it was a gift, but I will do my best to find one similar and link that for you as well. But I love my French rolling pin. I don't like the ones with the handles. I just feel like they're so wobbly. I don't like that. I feel like I get a better control over what I'm doing with the French rolling pin. And then you can just easily wash this up without getting it submerged, and you do just fine. So you just kind of roll these out thin, probably a half to a third as thick as they are when they come out of the can. And usually with these canned biscuits, you really don't need any flour to help you along either. But I just use like a tablespoon or so full of the mixture and roll them, kind of pinch them up together. You can do whichever way that you would prefer. You don't have to leave the top open. That's just the way she did it and still does it. And so that's the way that I do it. But you can do it whichever way that, you know, looks more appealing or that you would prefer to do. You could even put another biscuit on top, like fill the whole thing, and then pinch the edges together like a little pie. You could definitely do that too. So whichever way that you prefer to fold and roll them up will work just fine. You just want to get that mixture contained so that hopefully it doesn't spill out on you. And like I said, so it's just 3 ingredients. It's just the sausage, the block of cream cheese, and the biscuits. And then you just kind of pinch them together like so. So this is definitely a more time intensive and not necessarily difficult, just bigger, more time intensive breakfast than I would typically do. But it was Father's Day, and so I wanted to make some of his favorite things, and we all enjoy a big breakfast every now and then. So that is what I made him for beginning our Father's Day. And I'm just going to continue rolling these out here, and then I'll join you in the next part. So the sausage balls are out, and here is our breakfast. Everything is pretty much finished up. I've served part of that gravy, but you can definitely tell that as it sits, it gets thicker. So I could have added more milk from the get-go, and it would have made it less thick, but it worked out just fine. It was just enough gravy for us. I did make some scrambled eggs. There's the sausage balls. Those turned out delicious. You want to keep an eye on those. I bake those at 350 for about 10 to 12 minutes. And again, I'll put that recipe as well for you down in the description box. But just know that you're going to need to keep an eye on it. There's a look at our bacon. You can definitely see the difference in that bacon that I burnt versus the bacon that I did not burn. And there's a look at the biscuits all cooked out of the oven. Like I said, those are just drop biscuits, so they're not perfectly round. But it worked just fine. So here is a look at some plates. Just, I've already broken up biscuits and put gravy on it, so that looks like a much larger serving than it actually is. And even still, my eyes were bigger than what I could actually eat. So the girls, my youngest, just decided she wanted cinnamon bread with peanut butter and jelly. And then I did slice up some navel oranges, and there is my husband's plate with his navel oranges, his sausage balls, scrambled eggs, and hash brown potatoes.
Hey y'all, so I am now getting ready to prep for dinner. I have cleaned and done dishes and all that good stuff. And now we're gonna do dinner. So as you can see, the pantry is kind of a mess, but I am gonna find some brownie mix, and I think that's what I'm gonna make is brownies for dessert. And then we've got some vanilla bean ice cream. I think that's what we're gonna have. So I'm gonna get that out of here and mix those up and get those baking.
Okie doke, so now we're moving on to taco bake for dinner, and I am just starting with a little over 2 pounds of 80/20 ground beef, and it will not take all of the 2 pounds, but what I'm going to do is use half of it in taco bake, and then I just had a 2-pound package. Like I said, it's a little over. I had the big package, gonna cook it all up, put the other half in the fridge for later in the week. So that is cooking, and now I'm also going to work on some jalapeno poppers. These are just halved jalapenos, and then it's stuffed with cream cheese and shredded cheddar cheese mixed together and then wrapped in bacon. So I am just cutting these open, cutting the tops off, cutting them down the middle. They're already washed. And then I am going to take out most of the seeds and membranes so they're not too terribly spicy. These are another favorite of my husband's. So I will leave the recipes as, I'm not an exact chef here. I just go with what looks good, but I will leave some approximate recipes down below for you. And that way you can kind of find your starting point and work on these recipes for yourself. So again, and this may not be like the safest, most official way, so be very, very careful. You could also use a very, very small teaspoon to scoop out the seeds and membranes if that works better for you, if you'd rather not use a large knife. Or you could use a paring knife as well, where you have a little more control closer to your other hand. But I've done this, I don't know. I'm just not very fearful of it. Maybe perhaps I should be more fearful than I am. But I'm just going to use a half a block of cream cheese because I'm only doing 5 jalapenos, cut in half, so 10 to wrap. But anyways, and that spoon, I did not do a great job today of this day of leaving the cream cheese out on the counter enough. And so it didn't end up getting soft enough to use the spoon, and I just found it easier to use my hands. So I washed my hands, and now I've got all of these, and I'm just going to scoop up some of the cream cheese and cheddar cheese mixture and just kind of flatten it out in there. It is very moldable, so it's not like a runny mixture. And then just kind of press down with your fingers and get it going. So it's really simple. Just fill these up, and then we'll wrap them with half slices of bacon. If you have smaller bacon than like the Wright brand, if you have some of the more like center cut bacons or something like that, you may not want to cut your slices in half. So just fill it out. You could definitely, even with this Wright brand bacon, you could use a whole slice. I just didn't have a ton of bacon left, so I thought, what I have is plenty. And so you just kind of wrap them around as best that you can, and just want to cover the majority of the cream cheese mixture. It doesn't have to be perfect. Alright, so now that I've got these all on here, I've just got 10, so this one will work. And I popped those in the oven at 375, and we'll just keep an eye on those until the bacon is crispy. So now we are going to assemble our taco bake. This is a 9x13 pan, I believe. And I'm just going to add in the cooked ground beef on top of the tortillas. I did spray the bottom of this pan just slightly, just so the tortillas don't stick, but they usually do just fine. And then I have 2 jars. I'm doing a double batch. Normally I would just use a round pan and just use 1 tortilla, and then, you know, go from there, and 1 jar of sauce is fine. But I decided to make a double batch, and so this double batch is what I'll put down in the description for you. And so it's right at a pound of hamburger meat, and then about 8 individual tortillas, because I didn't use the entire package of 10. And you lay the tortillas, then your ground beef, and then I do the queso dip, and then some shredded cheddar cheese, and just keep layering like a lasagna. I normally use either the Tostitos or the Kroger brand of just their regular yellow salsa con queso, but they didn't have that, so I used the Kroger Monterey Jack queso dip, and it was very delicious. And you can see I'm struggling with that jar. But yeah, you just want to, you know, spread it out, and then I use my spatula as well to just kind of make sure that it's evenly coated, just so there's no like major spots that are dry. This is not, you know, this is not a scientific recipe. Something you could also add if you like that kind of thing, I just kept it very simple so that I knew everyone would eat it, but you could just use black beans or pinto beans, or even some refried beans in this, and just add that to your layers. You could also add other types of cheese. You could add in like onions and chopped bell peppers and rotel or something like that while you're cooking up your ground beef. And so that would give it, you know, more veggies and more flavor. But what I just did is I served some black beans with this on the side so that everybody could kind of pick what they wanted. And then I also made a big salad and some roasted asparagus in the oven. So we got our veggies in that way. But you could certainly add, you know, veggies or, you know, whatever you wanted to add flavor. So that's what it looks like. Gonna throw that in the oven. And while that is cooking, I have also pulled out my asparagus, and you can see here what that looks like. I just baked that with some olive oil, salt, pepper, and garlic powder. And there's a look at our beans and a look at our, sorry about that, got a little steam on you. There's a look at that as well. Okay, so now that everything is done, here's a look at our final plate of our full meal. We had a wonderful Father's Day with my husband, and thank you so much for joining me.